We all want to see growth, right? I mean, in our work, our communities, maybe just
Yeah.
personally. But how do you make it stick? Go beyond that first burst of energy and build something that, really lasts.
That is the big question, isn't it? It's something we've been looking into today. We've been digging into some leadership development resources, specifically about something they call a mid-level trainers retreat.
Okay?
Now, that might sound super specific, maybe a bit niche,
Yeah, mid-level trainers retreat.
but honestly, stick with us here because the principles behind it, I think they have really broad applications for anyone trying to foster growth that endures.
Right, right. So think of this retreat idea as like a really detailed case study for us. Our mission for this deep dive is basically to unpack those core ideas. How do you get growth to not just start, but to deepen, to really sustain itself? We want to understand that mix the outward expansion, sure, but also that inner strength needed to keep it going long term.
And the sources we're drawing on are things like summaries from these actual retreats, plus some very practical advice on developing the leaders who make this sustainable growth happen.
Okay, let's get into it. The sources talk about like two different dimensions or maybe phases of growth. The first one seems pretty, well, obvious. It's about getting things moving, sharing the message, finding people, starting those initial groups. First, second generation stuff, they call it.
Exactly. That's the seed sowing, the first harvest.
Yeah, seeing those first shoots appear, very exciting.
Totally. That's the initial buzz, where things really seem to be taking off. But here's the crucial bit, the real insight from these materials. For that growth to actually last, there's a second dimension, and it's vital.
Okay.
This is all about nurturing the leaders themselves, building their understanding, their skills, their maturity. That's what allows the initial growth to stabilize and then keep going. Third generation, fourth, and beyond. It's building that long-term capacity.
Ah, okay. So it's not just a numbers game, finding more and more new people. It's also about making sure the existing people get strong enough to, well, carry the load, nurture others, handle the bumps in the road.
Precisely. It's the health of the whole system.
Right.
Think of it maybe like a fruit tree. Loads of fruit is great, obviously. But you also need a strong tree, right? Well-nourished, sturdy roots, something that can keep producing year after year, survive storms, all that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And this second dimension, the strengthening part, it needs more than just teaching people the basic how-to steps.
Which, yeah, brings us right to this point that just the initial training, like the T4T stuff they mentioned, isn't the whole picture for this deeper growth. The sources are pretty clear. Making this work requires more than just training trainers. It's not a manual you just hand over.
No, and what's really interesting is the focus on providing and, importantly, modeling what they call pastoral care.
Pastoral care. In this context, what does that look like?
Yeah, so here it means that kind of emotional, spiritual, practical support. Like a shepherd, looking after the flock. It's about encouragement, guidance, helping people through personal stuff. It highlights that these trainers, they need more than just technical skills. They need a supportive environment to really grow.
So building a real community of support among these trainers sounds like a big piece of the puzzle. They mentioned things like accountability, counseling each other, mutual support. It sounds like they're building a network where people can grow personally while also making sure the main work keeps spreading effectively with integrity.
Exactly right. It recognizes that, individual struggles can block wider progress if they aren't addressed.
Yeah, bottlenecks.
Totally.
Yeah.
And this peer support, it's vital, not just for the trainer's own growth and, frankly, sanity, but also so they can handle difficulties, maybe even opposition. Everyone faces challenges, burnout, personal issues. These trainers need to deepen their own understanding and have people they can lean on. And that's really where this mid-level trainers conference or retreat idea fits in.
Okay, so let's focus on that retreat. What's its specific job? It sounds tailor-made for this deeper growth and community need.
Yeah, its main aim is to help these committed trainers, the ones doing the work, to go deeper in their own faith or core beliefs, and also to tackle problems, personal ones, ministry ones, and crucially, to build that team for prayer and just, networking and encouragement.
So the goals are growth in their core understanding, getting better at spotting and dealing with problems, and planning what's next.
Pretty much. Growth in the Lord, recognizing and handling issues, and planning future service. Those are the intended outcomes.
And you mentioned the length, 5 to 10 days, ideally, sometimes a weekend. That's a serious time commitment.
It is. It signals this isn't just a quick meeting. It's an investment in depth.
What about challenges with that time commitment? Are shorter versions ever effective?
That's a fair question. The longer time obviously allows for more depth, more relationship building. Shorter formats, like a weekend, might need to be more focused, maybe just on problem solving or casting vision. And they might need to happen more often to keep the momentum.
Okay.
Getting buy-in usually comes when people see the value, when trainers realize how much they benefit from that dedicated time.
Makes sense. And the components listed. Wow.
Worship, prayer, quiet time, personal scripture reading, Bible teaching, one-on-one counseling.
Group critique and encouragement, sharing victories and difficulties, fellowship, vision sharing, praying for each person.
It sounds incredibly holistic. It feels like a pattern emerging. Individual reflection, group interaction, mentorship.
Yeah, it's not just about learning stuff. It's building that whole supportive ecosystem for growth.
Personal and professional, really.
Absolutely. Nurturing the whole person.
Right.
Because personal well-being is foundational for being effective long-term.
Okay, so how do you even organize something like this, logistically speaking?
Good question. It sounds like a lot, maybe.
A bit daunting, yeah. Well, the prep involves the practicals you'd expect, right? Finding a place, food, lodging, making a schedule. But what's really key in the sources is the emphasis on training other people to handle these logistics for future retreats.
The modeling and delegation piece.
Exactly. Show how it's done, then empower others to take it on, so it doesn't depend on one person forever.
That's smart. Sustainable in itself.
Yeah.
Okay, so who gets the golden ticket? Who's invited to these mid-level retreats?
It's pretty specific. They're looking for coworkers, people actively using that initial T4T training method.
The trainer approach.
Right. And crucially, showing fruit. Evidence of results, usually meaning they've started groups that have multiplied to the third or maybe fourth generation.
Okay, so proven effectiveness.
Proven effectiveness and consistency. They need to have been doing the work for at least, say, 6 months. The focus is really on those who've shown commitment, they're seeing results, but now they need that deeper care, problem-solving help, spiritual growth, and frankly, sometimes just rest and encouragement.
People in the thick of it who've shown they can do it, but need refueling and maybe recalibrating for the next stage.
You got it. They're hitting the realities of sustained effort.
And it's not just those trainers invited, is it?
Yeah.
You mentioned a scripture teacher.
Yes. Ideally, someone comes who can lead in-depth teaching, often focusing on a whole book of the Bible, something foundational. Romans is often suggested as a good one.
Right. And the big trainer, the supervisor, they're there too.
Yep. And not just watching, they're involved in the training, especially learning how to lead these kinds of retreats themselves in the future.
So it builds leadership capacity right into the process.
Exactly. Ensures continuity.
Okay, let's walk through the retreat itself. What actually happens? The sources mention introductory time. What's that for?
That's really about setting the stage, building connection. People introduce themselves, like name, where they work, maybe when they came to faith, and importantly, the impact they're seeing. You know, people led to faith, number of groups, what generation level.
Sharing their story, their context.
Yeah. And then the purpose of the whole retreat is laid out clearly, usually followed by some shared worship, singing, prayer, a short devotion, and then logistics schedule, expectations.
So creating that shared space and purpose from the get-go. Then personal devotion time.
This is key. Dedicated quiet time for individuals. They usually get assigned scripture to read, often from the book they'll be studying together later.
Like Romans, maybe?
Like Romans. And the instruction is often to read it through multiple times, really meditate on it, take notes, deep personal engagement with the text.
That sounds like it feeds directly into that inner strengthening we talked about. Okay, next is personal counseling time. That sounds important.
It really is. Each person gets about an hour one-on-one with the same gender counselor, often the big trainer or someone experienced.
So what do they talk about?
It's pretty comprehensive. Successes, failures from the last few months, how their own evangelism and training is going, the health and generation level of their groups, but also personal life, family, work issues, their prayer life, even exploring their spiritual gifts and how they're using them.
Yeah, that's deep. That individual focus must be incredibly valuable.
For sure. Tailored support and guidance.
And after that personal time, there's this small group interpersonal relationship discussion. Sounds intense.
It can be, yeah, especially if you're not used to it. But the goals are really important. One is helping people see themselves more clearly, how they come across to others, like a mirror, they call it.
Yeah.
And the other is getting direct feedback. Strengths, yes, but also blind spots or areas for growth. It's all about building trust, openness, and just stronger fellowship in that group.
That principle of honest feedback, peer accountability
Mm.
that feels really powerful for any team trying to sustain momentum.
Absolutely. It's building a culture where continuous improvement is normal. It's shared.
How do they facilitate that? Games and discussions.
Yeah, sometimes they use activities like maybe a blindfold obstacle course or something, then discuss the feelings, the learnings, how it applies.
Okay, experiential stuff.
Right. And then more direct discussions about successes and struggles in the work, identifying strengths, areas people want to improve. And a key part is people sharing observations about each other, positive and, well, areas for growth. Constructive criticism.
Delivered carefully, hopefully.
Delivered carefully, yeah, within that trusted group. And it often ends with folks maybe repenting for things, encouraging each other, and praying together.
That sounds like it could really deepen bonds and self-awareness. What follows that group session?
Then comes personal and supervisor prayer time. It's like a follow-up to the group stuff. Each person meets again with their counselor or supervisor to talk through anything specific that came up. Concerns, plans.
Processing the group feedback individually.
Exactly. And it's time for the supervisor to give tailored encouragement, maybe point to relevant scripture, and pray specifically for that person and their situation.
Okay, so individual support again. Then the Bible study component.
Right, a core piece. In-depth study, like we mentioned, maybe Romans or another book. There's teaching, but also discussion, Q&A, really digging into the foundation.
Reinforcing the core knowledge.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And as things wind down, there's starting out again.
Yeah, this is the commitment part, looking forward. Starts with quiet prayer time for each person. Then, in their small groups, they share their actual plan for the next 6 months. Who they'll train, goals for new groups, generation levels.
Concrete plans.
Concrete plans, yeah. And their overall vision for that period. And there's usually a challenge to have faith, to aim high.
Translating the retreat into action. And the very end is a prayer of blessing.
That's the capstone. Everyone gives a word of encouragement to everyone else.
Yeah.
Going around the circle.
Nice.
Then prayers in the small groups about commitment. And finally, the big trainer leads a prayer covering everyone. Vision, ministry, growth, families, challenges, praying for victory.
It really sounds like a powerful, intentional process from start to finish.
Very deliberate. Very comprehensive.
Okay, shifting slightly. Beyond the retreat itself, the sources talk about this MAWL or model process. What's that about?
Yes. MAWL is model, assist, watch, leave, or letter. Model is similar. Model, observe, delegate, encourage, letter. They're basically frameworks for developing leaders progressively. Step-by-step empowerment.
A structured way to hand things over.
Exactly. Structured delegation, ensuring a smooth leadership transition so things don't fall apart when the main person steps back.
So how does that apply to training someone, say a big trainer, to lead one of these mid-level retreats eventually?
Good example. So in the model stage, the experienced leader involves the trainee in all the planning for a retreat. They work side by side during it. Maybe the trainee assists with leading a session or a discussion.
Learning by doing alongside the expert.
Right. Then assist. The experienced leader helps the trainee plan their first retreat, maybe co-leads it, but the trainee takes the main responsibility.
Okay, more ownership.
Then watch or observe. The experienced leader steps back more, lets the trainee lead fully, maybe just offering occasional suggestions, followed by a good debrief afterward.
Learning from their own experience with feedback.
Yep. And finally, leave or delegate. The trainee is now fully independent, plans and leads retreats on their own. The original leader just checks in sometimes, offers remote feedback.
Full handover.
Full handover. And that encourage piece in model reminds us that positive reinforcement is crucial throughout the whole journey.
It's a really clear path for leadership development.
Practical.
Very practical. Now, another question the sources touch on, other types of leaders, other gifts. Is this whole model just focused on the evangelist or trainer types?
That's a great question. The sources acknowledge that, well, yeah, the initial focus might be on those starting things, spreading the message. As the community or group matures, there's definitely space and, frankly, a need for all sorts of gifts and roles.
Like what?
Well, things emerge naturally, right? People gifted in helping the vulnerable, practical service, administration, hospitality, all kinds of things. The key thing seems to be keeping everyone connected to the core vision and encouraging them to use their specific gifts to contribute to the whole.
So it recognizes diversity is needed for long-term health.
Exactly. It's not a one-size-fits-all leadership mold.
Okay, one last interesting point from this section was about language calling people trainers. specifically not leaders. What's the reasoning there?
Yeah, this was interesting. It refers to a practice highlighted by someone named Ying in the material of deliberately just using the term trainer, even for people in very significant leadership roles.
Why? To avoid what?
Primarily to foster humility, to avoid the pride or maybe entitlement that can sometimes creep in with forming titles like leader, pastor, director, whatever.
The status thing.
Right. There's a caution about rushing to give titles. They can be hard to take back if someone falters, and sometimes they inflate egos. So the idea is to emphasize the function training, equipping over a formal position or rank.
So you might recognize someone as acting as, say, an evangelist, but you don't immediately slap the title on them.
Exactly. Let the role emerge from the function. And they connect this to that biblical wisdom, like in 1 Timothy, about not laying hands on someone, not appointing leaders too hastily.
Interesting point about titles. And the section wraps up with a simple reminder. Be a doer, not just a hearer.
Yeah, apply it. Reflect on it. Don't just listen.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. What's the single biggest takeaway from this whole deep dive into the mid-level trainers retreat and these principles?
For me, it's that real lasting growth, the sustainable kind. It doesn't just happen. It needs deliberate, ongoing investment in people. Not just giving them the initial how-to, but equipping them with deeper understanding, personal strength, resilience, and those vital supportive relationships. It's looking beyond the quick wins and focusing on building that long-term capacity.
And this mid-level trainers retreat model gives a concrete, pretty fascinating example of how to do that. That mix of spiritual input, practical skills, and crucially, that peer accountability and support.
Exactly. It's a structure for intentionally nurturing those key people who are making things happen, helping them become even more effective, more resilient for the long haul.
So for you listening, as you think about your own world, your team, your project, maybe just your own growth, how might these ideas apply? Intentional development, peer support, that step-by-step leadership training like MAWL or MAWL. Who are the sort of mid-level trainers in your context? Those key people driving things forward might benefit from deeper investment, more support, maybe just something to think about. How could you adapt some of these principles to foster growth that's not just fast, but truly sustainable and meaningful?